Welcome to the weekly news around Bali and Asia. My name is Bruce Pullman, and I'm going to be talking about the news every week. These are short newscasts about topics of interest to those of us that live or visit Bali or Asia. I'll be covering all of Asia and maybe a little bit in Melanesia, another of my interest. And I'm an anthropologist. This newscast is coming to you from the Peripatetic Anthropologist YouTube channel. Good evening. Welcome back to the weekly news around Bali and Asia. My name is Bruce Pullman, and this is the April 30th edition. And let's start out with some good news. The first day since testing has started in Bali, we have 0 cases. Yes, 0 cases. Numbers have been going up regularly, not by a whole lot. The other day there was a little spike of about a dozen. We're at a total of 215 now, but the number of recovered patients is rising and no new cases, so that's really good news. Why is this happening in Bali? I don't know, but don't look a gift horse in the mouth. And so, what do we have for this week? Well, it's mostly about Indonesia because there's just been so much news, well, everywhere this week. And things keep changing constantly here. And so we're gonna do tonight mostly Indonesia, and with a little update on online education in Japan and Korea, and that's what we've got. So let's get started. The numbers for today in Indonesia: 10,118 confirmed cases, 792 deaths. I'll talk about that in a minute. And we're up now to 346 tests per million. So we're getting up slowly, but it's a long way from what we had not long ago, 0. So that's good news. And not just old timers. There's an interesting article in the Jakarta Post the other day breaking down the number of people that have died, and surprisingly, it is not the over 80s. So let's start out with breaking down some numbers. People that like to downplay the coronavirus say, well, it's those people over 80. Everybody knows that. Look at the figures. Well, here's some new figures that have come out of Indonesia, and they're surprising. The biggest group in the number of deaths in Indonesia, the 30 to 59 age group, is number 1. Number 2, the 15 to 29 age group. Number 3, the 60 to 79, the 5 to 14 next, 80 plus, and finally 0 to 4 years old. So there's a range here. This is not just old people. It affects everybody, and I've said this before in a newscast maybe last week, 2 weeks ago, when I was talking about the number of deaths in the medical personnel. These are young people, and they're dying here. So it's not just old people. As tragic as this is, it gives us a different look. And like a lot of scientists are saying now, we just don't know about the virus still. We're still learning about it. Okay, That's number one. Number two, well, good news, some more good news. South Korea has sent us a shipment of PCR test kits as part of a $500,000 grant in kind to Indonesia. The test kits are enough to test up to 32,200 samples. And President Jokowi and President Moon of South Korea had a phone conversation last week expressing their desires to continue on and extend their cooperation during the pandemic and afterwards. And we have a large trading relationship with South Korea. This house is full of things from South Korea, from my TV, my air conditioner, my big monitor, all come from Samsung, LG. My car is South Korean. So we get a lot of electronic equipment from South Korea. We've had a long trading relationship with them, and they've been very helpful in our time of need. And next up, travelers in Java ignoring the ban on mudik. You may remember from my last newscast, I was talking about mudik. Mudik is the exodus when people go home at the end of Idul Last year there were approximately 18 million people moving out of the greater Jakarta area on their way home. President Jokowi put a ban on it last week, but people have been sneaking out anyway. And according to an article in the Jakarta Post, people have been, and this has apparently been on the television too. I haven't seen it on TV, but my wife was telling me, hiding in trucks. They caught one guy who put his car inside of a truck and then covered it with boxes and other things. And in Central Java, the Central Java governor called on people not to undertake mudik secretly because they were putting themselves at risk as well as other people. And they were referring specifically to a case where 8 people left, bypassed the ban, went home, were tested positive for the virus. So this is something that we've been concerned about, this large movement of people coming out of the Jakarta area where the epicenter of the COVID-19 cases have been. And the police report that they've been turning away thousands of vehicles trying to leave the city. Checkpoints are set up at many of the exit locations in the greater Jakarta area, but if people want to get out, they will get out. We just have to hope that they're going to be socially responsible. And according to the police, the number of people leaving Jakarta rose rapidly after the government announced that a ban would take place in 2 days. And of course, once you make an announcement that a ban is going to take place in 2 days, everybody's going to try to get out before those 2 days. And so a lot of people left, and they've spread out, and we don't know how this is going to turn out in terms of spreading the virus around the country, even more than it has been. It's been reported in all 34 provinces at this point. And the penalty, the fines for violating the ban, up to 100 million rupiahs. That's over 6,000 US dollars. Or 1 year in prison. Whether those penalties will be handed out is another question. And an update on one of these interesting stories that I talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't know. Let me see. Maybe I can find the link and put it here. This was the commissioner of the Indonesian Child Protection commissioner who was warning women not to swim in a pool with men because of super sperm, and they could get pregnant. The super sperm would seek them out and make them pregnant. She was widely ridiculed for this, and the commission denied that they supported this statement, and the Indonesian Doctors Association also said, hey, it ain't happening. Well, she was fired by President Jokowi, and she's accepted the firing, but she said that it was unfair. She should only have been given a reprimand, a letter of reprimand, and administrative punishment, and she's not happy, but she's out. And so, yeah, good. There's enough crazies around. This was one of the more bizarre statements, but one that you see sometimes here. So that's it for Indonesia, with one exception, and that'll be at the end. Let's go over to other countries and take a look and see what's going on in Japan. Well, school is canceled in Japan, and they have not been doing online schooling. But the university's spring semester is starting in a few weeks, and students are going to be taking online classes. There's a question about fees. Students don't want to pay normal fees if they're taking online classes. They say that the quality is not going to be as good, and since they're not actually being physically present in the university, they should not have to pay full fees. Well, the universities have come up with some ways to meet these demands from university students, and in some cases they are reducing the fees by as much as 60,000 yen. So, for example, in Shibara Institute of Technology, they're going to be reducing tuition for the semester by 60,000 yen. Other universities will be giving students a stipend, generally around 50,000 yen, to cover the cost of upgrading their internet connections and buying any kind of hardware or software that they're going to need to take the online classes. And other universities will be giving students a reduction in fees, not only so that they can access the online classes better, but so that they can meet some other needs like paying rent, buying food, because some of their parents are out of work, or if students have a job that they're supporting themselves through school with. This stipend will allow them to continue with their education. That's great. I think students will appreciate that, and universities are too expensive anyway. Now, Korea has the same situation. Korean students have been complaining, for months. They've been on online school for quite a while now in Korea, and students have been complaining and asking for a reduction in fees there, but so far universities have held fast and said there will be no reduction in fees. I'm wondering though how long that's gonna go. My guess is that at some point there'll be some kind of stipend similar to Japan, and that's the way things are now. But things change so quickly these days with the coronavirus, and governments, educational institutions, everyone. They say one thing one day, the next day there's something else. So let's hope that the Korean students get some financial relief as well. And one more item for today, some good news in Indonesia. At the urging of President Jokowi, the Psychological Services for Mental Health, SEJIWA, has been started, and this is a online psychological consultation service that anybody can access, and there's some anxious people in Indonesia now, with the numbers rising, continuing to rise, and a caller will be connected with one of 162 volunteer psychologists from the Indonesian Psychology Association, and this can be accessed by dialing the extension 8 on the National COVID-19 hotline of 119. So if you would like to speak to a psychologist, 119 is the hotline and extension 8, and they will provide multi-tiered support from providing self-care and early psychological health to referring callers to one of 533 psychologists across the country. And this program is also, it's hoped that this program will be of benefit to victims of domestic violence, both women and children. And according to the article, from the period of March 12th until April 25th, there were 275 reported incidents of violence against women and 365 against children. This is a problem in Indonesia that is usually swept under the rug, and it's been coming out thanks to women's organizations. And so, if you're living in Indonesia, if you're an Indonesian, I don't know if expats can access this. If you can speak Indonesian, I guess maybe so. Call 119, extension 8, and talk to a psychologist. Mental health is as important as physical health, especially in these days of uncertainty. And that's it for the weekly news around Bali and Asia. Some good news today. Oh, one little thing I just saw online. South Korea today, zero new cases. Well, there are 4 cases, but they were all imported cases, no domestic cases. So, first time since February 18th that there are no new cases. So, some good news for Bali and South Korea. And let's hope that we see the same thing happening around the rest of the world. And that's it for tonight. Stay safe, stay home, follow government rules, and be kind to someone. See you next week.